Friday, March 18th. It's 8 a.m. and this is the Stockbridge Wall Stewardship Commission meeting, and I'd like to call it to order. I'd like to approve the minutes from November 19th, 2021, and I sent everyone another copy. So if I could have a motion to approve those minutes.
So make a motion to approve it. Second the motion.
Okay, so Charlie and John, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And I'd like to make someone to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 4th minutes.
So moved. Second.
Charlie and John. And all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And I'll send those in to the clerk. So at this point, are there any questions or comments from the public at this point? Anita, do you want to ask a question?
I do. We're doing this first.
I think so, just because sometimes we run out of time at the end of meetings and people get frustrated.
Excellent. I would like to comment on the planning board's responsibility for the Lake Pond Overlay District and what took place at the Tuesday meeting. It appears to me, and it occurred to me, that there is no one from planning board on the Stewardship Commission, and that what happens in the Lake Pond Overlay District does have an impact on the watershed and on the lake, which was the reason for that overlay district. And I think it was really not dealt with in a good manner. That special permit, there was absolutely, in my opinion, it should have at least been continued out of concern for the character of the neighborhood. That 6.3.6 something like that. And the way that landscaper and the lawyer who was on the call were speaking to the members of the planning board and almost in a bullying way, and said that if the town doesn't like it, then they should change the bylaw. So I think that one of the concerns of the planning board was supposed to be to switch the responsibility for Lake Pond Overlay District to the Conservation Commission. And I just think that possibly the Stewardship Commission should take some responsibility or have some input into how that is handled. I just think that that ginormous house and taking down 61 trees is going to have a terrible impact on the lake, as well as changing the view, and the blasting that they're talking about is just very concerning. And I do think that these things do impact the lake, and just would appreciate it if your commission would consider some involvement in the Lake Pond Overlay District. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for letting me speak.
You're welcome. Anyone else have their hand raised?
Can I respond to Anita?
Yes, you may.
On this topic, I didn't see the planning board meeting yet, but it already had gone before the Conservation Commission and got passed there.
No, it didn't get passed. We did
you
not
held on
pass it. We are still waiting for the White engineering report
Okay.
for stormwater.
And I read Stockbridge updates and it sounded to me
No.
like it had gone through.
It hadn't gone through.
Okay.
Can't trust the web.
But at any rate, I mean, we have a couple different things here. One is that the planning board is an elected body, so that basically if you're not happy with how the planning board handled that, that's an issue for the planning board. You know, all the area around the lake and the watershed obviously is this particular commission's responsibility and oversight, but this is an advisory group. to the select board. So different kinds of responsibility, but the direct responsibility for the Lake and Pond Overlay District in terms of zoning is the planning board. So Anita, I would speak with the planning board about your concerns. And I'm going to go watch that meeting after I leave this, so I can be up to date.
Please do, because the special permit goes to you next, I believe, to
They
the
are.
select board.
Oversight.
And
And Nita,
Yes.
if we deny it, it doesn't go to select board. So we have not approved or denied yet.
it just seems that the Lake Pond Overlay District might be better served by Concom, and there was a lot of confusion on the part of planning board as to the impact on the lake. I just
Well,
wanted to say.
But the
They-
Conservation Commission and who's somebody has,
Yeah, hold on.
Michael.
So,
Michael.
Conservation Commission already has authority over Lake and Pond Overlay District, and so does the planning board.
Okay, good to know, because it sounded like it was just planning board. And that I thought that on the agenda was an item where they were going to discuss possibly transferring their responsibility to Concom, but they didn't get that far. But I thank you. I hope you do watch the meeting. I would like your input, your response to it.
It should be interesting.
just
Thank you,
Can
Anita.
I just say a quick thing about that? I think Anita made
Something that was.
Charlie quickly, and then Gary, Charlie, then Gary.
I think Anita made a very good point. I think it, in spite of the fact that we would call this an advisory group, which I understand our limitations in that regard, still, I think a better understanding of the functions of the different committees in town, and this group has already a large representation in the town, but to understand even better how we might interrelate with some of the other committees to protect the lake. And I mean, from what I understand, this is a horrible encroachment on the surround and sets a precedent for the areas around the lake that I think is horrible. And actually, I think that if this gets past the planning board, we should ask them to come here and call them to task for that, and not be bullied if that's the case. But I do think Anita's point is very good, and I think the exchange of information and understanding between the committees is really good. And I think at some point we should invite someone from the planning board to explain exactly what's going on to this committee. Thank you.
That's a good idea,
I would
Charlie.
ask Jamie if you were in on the meeting, the Conservation Commission meeting about this particular project.
There's been two.
Right, but can you just give an update in terms of where that all stands?
I did last meeting. So we are waiting for the white engineer report for the stormwater, because the size of the house and the septic and the infiltration system takes up almost the entire boundary of the property, but it's still within, on the very border of our zoning law. They're cutting down 61 trees, large trees. They're willing to plant small, tiny little trees, but they need to blast ledge to get this house to fit into this property, and there's neighbors all around, and their wells will be affected and their foundations. They are not taking responsibility for the blasting and what it sounds like, and that they're giving it to the building Ned, that it would be his problem. So it's really, they're really pushing, they're pushing all the boundaries, and,
Hi.
Just out of curiosity, if the planning board were to assume or approve something and the Conservation Commission disapproved, what would happen?
I think it fails, but
Both
like
have.
everyone has to pass.
So both have to agree, okay.
Right.
Right. So if we deny, it doesn't go to select board. If it goes past conservation, it goes to the select board, but they can give the final nay, is my understanding.
When we did the sewer project in '03 and '04, and we blasted 25 feet deep on Goodrich Street, we had to put seismic sensors next to everybody's house. There's a certain level, and the blasters have to do it when they're in close proximity to buildings. So they have to put seismic sensors around the foundations to make sure they don't hit a certain threshold. And if they do, obviously they shot it too hard, or put too much
So,
dynamite or whatever they use nowadays, in the holes. So there's a lot of, precautions that go around blasting, and that was 20 years ago we did this, so I'm sure it's even more precautionary now. But
Jamie, do you know, do we have any nesting bald eagles on that
Yes.
property?
Well, not on that property, on a
I know in the
adjacent property.
vicinity. Really? In a butter?
Yeah, Ron has a picture of it.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly remember which house, but there was a nest and an eagle.
Okay.
And I think active nests is 750 feet activity. That's a federal thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
What does it say that again? What-
750 feet,
What does that mean?
like a radius around an active nesting bald eagle nest.
have to prove it's
There's
active.
certain
Is a bald eagle nest?
Exactly, so I don't know how we,
Demolition?
active nest, yeah. I don't know what
Do it with
the,
the
there's a
drone.
federal law that protects
Okay.
that area.
Okay, let's move on.
Gary, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So any other questions from the public? Nita, no. I don't see any.
I just didn't take it down.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So moving on to our agenda items, at this point, I would like to make, I guess to start off things, I have a sort of, I guess, a statement or a question. So as the chair of the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission, I would like to ask the commission members how we should plan on going forward. We all want to preserve and encourage the healthy development of our great pond. So how do we do that is a question on the table. I would like a vote that reflects the consensus of our commission. We have discussed ongoing actions that should be taken. My question is, which comes first? Harvesting, dredging, or herbicide? It is a very important question, and we need to answer it now because DEP and NHESP prefer these methods to be used one at a time. Two at a time if we can defend it. The bowl belongs to everyone, but as a commission, as a commission have the responsibility to determine which best serves the lake. As we know, the issues are the 4-year herbicide treatment plan requires changes to the order of conditions. And the 2-year dredging project cannot take place in the same time as the herbicide application. Dredging can take place in conjunction with harvesting. Harvesting may or may not take place at the same time as testing and the herbicide application are ongoing. These two projects, if allowed in the same year, must be coordinated as timing and location. So I call on you as the committee charged with this responsibility for your consensus about how to prioritize the order of these actions, herbicide first or dredging first. It is very important as the SBSC express our priority and that we do it openly. I hope and expect the Stockbridge Bowl Association will do the same. So I'm calling, I'd like to, we brought up the matrix. Charlie made a motion to send the matrix to the select board. I have not heard back from the select board. So it could be there, it could not be there. We've gone around the bush, but I think we should sort of like, as a commission, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? How do we want to do this? And I think we should maybe take a vote.
Well, before we
Wait,
take a
Gary.
vote,
Oh,
let's have a discussion.
okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention, we have already voted on this.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt.
Not officially.
Well, when we were at the meeting last week, we said, what do we want to do in the next 0 to 3 years? What's our priority? And I thought, and I appreciate what you're saying, because I think it's a wonderful thing to to re-go
Be
over.
solid. I think we should be solid
Last meeting,
and clear.
yes, last meeting, I thought, I'm not sure if I saw it in the meetings, but in the minutes, I apologize, but that we had said that dredging was the SBSC's priority in the next 3 years. We did not rule out by any means herbicides because that's.
And I think.
But for us as a town committee, I believe, or committee, we had come to the conclusion that dredging was the most important project on so many levels. The good of the town, the health of the lake, the imperativeness of doing it now while we have momentum and we have financing from SBA, that a lot of people raised money and spent a lot of time. So I thought we had done that last time, but I'm willing to re-discuss it. But I thought everybody was in agreement on that the dredging was the single most important project we are facing.
It was Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Michael is right on the mark there. I appreciate your I think what you're trying to do, it seems to me, is to just simply focus on the priority idea. You know, we have a lot of things we've been discussing about the lake management plan, and I agree with Michael. We've been incorporating this into our whole thing, and we are trying to prioritize these things. And I agree that I think we've focused, we've made it clear that dredging is a top priority. Okay. That's one of the first things. And then we also know that we have the harvesting and the herbicides as other means by which there are ways of controlling things that related to vegetation that we don't like. I appreciate your attempting to just sort of take those priorities out of the whole lake management plan idea so that the general public understands that we're trying to do something in a timely way. And we need to get these things done soon. And so I think to just make a simple statement that the dredging is on the top of our list in terms of what needs to be done. It sort of sorts it out from all this other stuff we're discussing. You know, we're discussing testing, we're discussing this. It sometimes can lose its, everything can sort of fall into the background. But we do have, this committee has been looking at, and I do think that we can state, I would hope we could state, that we have a priority for this coming season. And the priority is that we want to try to get the dredging done as soon as possible. And we want to continue to do the harvesting. And, you know, the herbicide is in its own, domain because it's under scrutiny and the different kinds of things that need to take place for that to take place. But I would say, let's just make a clear statement. We need to do dredging. We need to do harvesting. And then whatever happens with the herbicide and the NHESP and everything like that, that falls according to what happens.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. And I also have been thinking about, we put a lot of time and energy into the herbicide idea and project. And I think there's no shame in going a different direction. There's no shame in saying, oh, things have changed, and that, that we can go forward with a new project. The only concern with dredging I have is, can we get it really started, permitted, and the money, the funding and everything, so that we can have a clear way forward and tell our townspeople, yes, we can do this, and that they feel confident and that action can happen, because dredging will take a year or two. It's not a quick fix. It's not, and the money gathering isn't quick. Yes, Michael.
I think the only way to answer that question is if the town sees that all parties are in the same boat, rowing in the same direction.
Exactly.
Because that sends a message to NHESP. NHESP will not say they won't allow us per se, but the obstacles and the odds of them allowing it, and they've said this to us at meetings various times. It's not just one time and we picked up on it. But the SBA has done such an incredible job under Richard and now under Pat of raising the money, of going forward. We've collected $1.5 million from homeowners. So we have stated it and put our energy and our money where our mouth is, saying that this is what we want to do. And I think the message, if it's clearly stated to the town, and we all work together and work with CPA money and town money and grants, and we all work together, that's the only way we can get to the end result. It's the only way, but we shouldn't defeat. There are going to be many obstacles along the way that will come on their own. But us as a group should not defeat it before we have all our ammunition together and we all work together.
And I truly believe in cooperation and in collaboration.
If that goes a long way in getting it done, when
Right.
we as a community want this.
May I interrupt, please?
Yes, Pat?
Thank you. I've had my hand up, but I know you don't have the screen in front of you.
Well, we can't see that. Yes, go ahead, Pat.
Right. Thank you. I understand what you're trying to do in terms of prioritizing and all of the options that are available to us to do things in the lake. What I need to make clear is the narrative that these things cannot necessarily happen simultaneously. Roxanne and myself and Mike Canales and Ron Brucker and Patrick White and a number of other people were on a meeting on Tuesday with DEP and NHESP, which I thought was incredibly productive and allowed us to see a way forward, not only for this season, but into the future. And basically, to summarize it, we came out with an agreement about how we, the SBA, could identify our test plots while allowing harvesting to proceed, in some cases ahead of when we have the test plots, and in some cases after we market. But also more importantly, I asked them the direct question. And by the way, Ms. Deanne Merrill was on the call, as well as Brian Harrington from DEP, about the allowability of doing things simultaneously. And the answer was that it was up to us, meaning the SBA, to figure out if our herbicide testing and or treatment would interfere with dredging or vice versa. And Roxanne has graciously agreed to provide the SBA with the engineering study so that we can figure out when and if we have test plots, where we put them so that they don't interfere with the dredging. And it may or may not be possible. We don't know that in advance of the facts. But I would like to ask that we discontinue this narrative of it's a binary choice, an either or decision, because that is not what was told to us at the meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you, Pat. And I'd like to now ask the question as the chair of the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission. And I asked Michael Canales, and I've asked you why I was not invited to the meeting. And while you said that would be appropriate, just as Roxanne and Michael Canales did, I was not invited. So I would like an explanation.
Well, I don't know that I ever said it was appropriate, because what we're dealing with that particular meeting, this is in regards to a negotiated settlement between the town administration, the Conservation Commission, and the SBA.
I am the chair of the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission, and it is appropriate. And I appreciate this, but it's not okay. Not okay. I need the information just as much as anyone else. And I am
now receiving the information via Pat and via myself. I was also obviously going to give you an update on how that meeting went. Pat pretty much covered it, and it went quite well. It was supposed to be the chair of the Conservation Commission, the chair of the Select Board, the town administrator, the president of the SBA, and her other designee, which I believe was Ira Golub, was there. And then Ms. Deanne Merrill from NHESP and the new DEP employee, Brian Harrington. So those were supposed to be the parties at that meeting. Unfortunately, because Brian Harrington is new at the DEP, he sent the invitation to the entire select board. Michael Canales apparently told Patrick that it was supposed to be just the chair, and Patrick came anyway, so that's fine. It turned out to be fine, because we didn't end up having anything that the select board would have to actually deliberate on. all worked out quite well in terms of the discussion of when they are going out, and they're going out in May, mid-May to late May. Solitude is going out to do their survey. And they will, as quickly as possible, determine what the new test areas are going to be and what the new control area, if it's going to be changed. It was decided among us that those areas, even though they still would have to be approved by DEP, that they can be actually designated with buoy markers as soon as they've proposed
They're
them.
gonna,
Right.
they're gonna change the current ones now, because the current ones don't could in any way come near any of the dredging.
Yes, one does,
The one at the island, it just,
to the west of the island,
you're
right where.
That was an original.
Okay,
But we don't
we can
know.
move that down a quarter of a mile.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing is that
Well-
they don't know where those are going to be because they do have criteria and they have to have at least 50% invasives in the areas. So it's going to be dependent on what the experience is this year. But we do have an agreement that those will be marked as soon as they've decided what these proposed areas are going to be, even though they have not yet been approved by DEP. Brian Harrington at DEP assures us that they will try to move quickly in terms of that approval. In the meantime, and in terms of the engineering study, Pat, for the dredging, I'm thinking the most likely, and I did talk to Michael Nathan about this the other day, to provide you with the map so that we can have all the maps available, so you can really see what the layout is of that dredging, where it's going to be deposited in Bullard Woods, et cetera.
Charlie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't think we should backtrack and look too closely at what the commission should have participated in. I mean, I see that, I can understand, Jamie, that you're upset that you weren't invited. I think that one of the things that I think that particular issue, that question that Jamie just asked is relevant to, not meaning to digress from a discussion in the entire meeting, is that I do think that, we put a lot of time into this, all of the members of this commission. We spend our time preparing for this meeting, doing different things to try to get prepared to do it and everything like that. And I think in a general sense, we believe that we're trying to represent the town. We have members of different interest groups in the town participating in this commission. So what I would like to see going forward is, and especially, since this is an advisory committee for the select board, I appreciate, that Roxanne will give us reports about what happens at these meetings, but it begins to get to be like a cadiddly looper bird. In other words, we get a report from a single member of the select board, and then we're supposed to go back and advise the select board from that report. What I think is that we should have our own representative at these meetings going forward, to show that this commission is worthwhile, that we do represent the entire town, and that we do wish to advise the select board eventually based on our opinions and what we put together representing the town. I think that's the fair way to do it. Otherwise, we just get if we advise the select board based, and I'm not calling it a task for your input. You're a very hard worker, Roxanne. But if we advise the select board based on what you tell us we should advise the select board, then basically we're not really doing our job representing the town. So I would like to have, going forward, rather than complaining about the past, I'd like to have a member of our committee present, of our commission present at these meetings that are so important to the Stockbridge Bowl.
Thank you,
Well,
Charlie.
I'm not so sure that this is a particular situation where the SBSC would be advising the select board. This is an, real-time meeting where we're actually making decisions in that real time, because it's a negotiated settlement. There are rules that we have to follow. So I can discuss this with town council and the town administrator, but this is how it's been. The SBSC didn't even exist during the first phases of this.
I've been chair for 2 years. So
Right, the first phase of this, Terry Flynn, as the chairman, was involved in the initial meeting with DEP, SBA, NHE.
well, let's
Right, but
not
we do exist
digress.
now, and I think if we're going to, I totally agree with you, Roxanne. in the past, we didn't exist. There was a sort of facsimile of this committee that started up, and because it was really not effective and because it didn't have any kind of importance in town, it dissolved. It went away. And I think that if we're going to have a continued presence in town that I think this commission is supposed to be having, I don't think this commission is supposed to be a facade. I think this commission is supposed to be a legitimate set of inputs from the interested parties around the lake. I think that going forward, the select board should advise NHESP of our importance and make it very clear to the DEP that we should be invited in the future. That's what I'm saying. In other words, going forward, our commission should have the stature to represent the town in these meetings, just as the SBA does for themselves, just as a Concom does. Otherwise, what's happening really is that this commission is being put down into a subordinate kind of level that doesn't really speak to being a commission.
Well, I can assure you that,
No, Michael had his hand up.
sorry.
I apologize. We had, growing up in Puerto Rico, we had a representative in the Senate called the resident commissioner. No vote, but was at all the Senate hearings. We had, whatever. And I, as the former chair of the Stockbridge Bowl Committee, which was dissolved because nobody attended, we couldn't get any of the select board members to come, and I am so thankful for Roxanne for making this a serious coming to the meetings. But at least I could appreciate, if I was the chair, at least that I could hear what's going on, that I have eyes and ears at the meeting, if nothing else. In other words, I may not be able to have a vote or whatever, but I can see the point that you're making. I think any one of us who were chair would say at least we should have eyes and ears at this meeting if we can't vote.
It's been offered.
And that's just, might be a compromise, might be a way of, but.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's I would have, if I was chair, I could appreciate your concern.
Just to reassure Charlie, in a meeting with GZA about dredging, when NHESP was there, I made sure that NHESP knows that the SBSC not only has been created, that it was passed in our last town meeting, so it's codified in our bylaws, that it is a permanent group. So they are now aware of it, and DEP and NHESP were both quite impressed, and that I think helped, and it's certainly going to help. And I think our primary objective now is to get this lake management plan underway.
I sent the matrix.
Michael, I like your idea. I like your idea. Eyes and ears are a big deal.
Yeah, the other thing,
Yeah, we need to,
can we get back to
do you want to get back to,
what your premise and what you originally wanted to say? The last thing I want to say is that in our last meeting, I thought we were going to send
I did.
hold on a second, to GZA.
Charlie made a motion to send it to the select board.
I
I
thought
sent
we
it to
also-
Teresa, Michael, and the select board. I haven't heard back.
Oh, I thought we were going to send it to GZA as the first.
No, that it has to go, it's an advisory
Okay,
committee.
no problem, thank you.
And I haven't heard back,
Next
so
conversation.
I don't know where it is.
Okay.
Could be in spam. I don't know.
Well, I thought we were,
No, Charlie made a motion and then it was going to select board for you, and you said you guys were busy, but I sent it to Teresa and to Michael and.
Why can't we send at least this from us as a committee to GZA of saying that from 0 to 3, this is our priority to put in the timeline from the town?
Right.
Or we can't do that unless the select board says it's okay, or how does that work, Roxanne?
no, obviously we'll look at it, but I was under the impression that you were, based on our last meeting, you were going to update the matrix, and then I thought we would come back together as a group to approve that to be passed on.
So
No,
let's go
Charlie made a motion.
No, let's just go forward. So let's go from today on. What's the next step?
What's the next step?
What's the next step? What do you think is the next step for us to do?
So
You
you-
sent it to the select board?
Because
When-
that, Charlie made a motion.
no, we-
John seconded
Right.
it, and it was to go there, to go to see, because if they're hired as the specialists and they're limnologists and lake management specialists, then they should look at our list and see, is it really, are these things really doable? Are we on the right track? Are we doing the right,
Yeah, but I think GZA has to tell us.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, but why
That's
don't we
why-
send it
but
to the
did you-
GZA?
Because Roxanne said that we are an advisory board, it has to be passed go through them to get to GZA. I can't just send it to GZA, plus I don't have a contact because I'm never included as the chair. So I am sort of powerless.
They have been in our meetings, and so I'm assuming you have their contact information.
Why, can we make a motion then to agree or to vote that we're going to send that 0 to 3, our priorities straight to GZA, just to get the ball rolling with them?
If that's,
Second the motion. Second the motion.
And the matrix.
And the matrix, yeah.
sure,
Thank you. Thank you.
right.
Charlie just did a second on the motion.
Wait, Charlie, you seconded it?
Yeah, I assume Michael made that motion, so I second.
Okay. And also, I don't want to feel like
You're doing great.
no, that I'm a hamster wheel. Like, we keep, okay,
Welcome.
okay. All right, so then,
Do you require any contact information? I'm assuming that you should have it for GZA.
I have Chris Main's information.
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
Is he the person, is that the
Is
same
he
group that's
our-
doing
Yeah.
the
Yeah, he's part of that.
lake management plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. To Chris. All right. Michael Buffoni, do you have any updates on either water and sewer, water testing? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Ice-
That's next.
No, the ice is, once the ice comes off, we will, resume testing, and sampling. I'll be in contact with Chris May and myself. That's the gentleman we work with out there on getting the samples. And I'm not sure how this year's contract, are they gonna come out once or twice, or how we left it? I guess it would be last year's contract really, or the current contract. They usually come out in July or something like that.
Probably be twice again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they usually come out the first time. And I will get in touch with Chuck. We talked about, I mentioned last year at the end of the season that with us not having boats out and available, Mark's boat is not usually out till the water's warm. And we're trying to get samples in April and May and June, before the water warms up and you can really go out and actually get in the lake. That we should, if Chuck is gonna be our guy that we can go to on Lake Drive and just get us out on the lake. He has his boat in usually very early. We should consider, and I believe because he ran the harvester, he is considered a town employee, but, it's a huge deal for us to be able to have him at our disposal like that. And I think personally, there should be some kind of compensation every time he runs us out there. It's a couple hours every time out of his day to do that. So that's something that should be considered. We can't take his boat out by ourselves, but
Do you have a boat? I have a boat that's sitting in my backyard.
I know, the thing is that Michael Canales told us, we can't go use somebody's boat that's not the town's. It's like, we can't just go jump in somebody's thing because then it becomes a liability with
Yeah, but
us.
his boat is in a town boat.
I understand that. That's why I'm saying we need to make it so there's some kind of,
But I can give it to if you'll accept it, I can, if it's workable, I can give it as a gift to the town.
I just want to be,
It's not used
we're
at all.
going out, somebody's gonna take us, that's great.
Yeah.
Mark doesn't have his boat out early enough and late enough to do the early and late sampling, so we have to rely on somebody else. And, that was just my feeling.
How early did you say was the earliest?
Well, usually we try to get out there in the end of April.
Yeah, I have my boat on a trailer. I can bring it in.
And everybody's offered that, but somebody's gotta take us out type of thing, which is fine. And Chuck boat is in the water. We don't have to deal with the boat ramp. We don't have to deal with loading and unloading. We park in his driveway, we walk down onto his dock, jump in the boat, and we're out on the lake. It's great.
Have you talked to him yet this year?
I have not.
Okay, well, we'll talk to him.
Yes.
And it's an item that I can have Michael look at, putting a stipend on the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he technically was an employee last year, so.
Or whatever.
Gas
You
money.
have to look at the insurance and the
It's his
liability
time.
aspect.
He works out of his house a lot, which is great, and he's home, and he's so,
I'm gonna tell you,
bends over backwards
if
for
you
us.
told him that he had to pay you to go out on the water, he would pay you.
I know. And he likes learning about what we're doing, so I mean, that's my 2 cents on the whole thing. I think it's kind of I don't know, the liability with us going, I don't know how that.
It sounds like a plan, like a good
Yeah.
compromise.
So we will, we'll definitely get in touch with him, and I mentioned this to him at the end of last season, that we need to get this kind of in motion. I talked to Michael Canales about it too. It's just my thought, that's all.
Great.
But everything, the sound and all that will get sent out for its routine maintenance. We have a maintenance plan on it. They'll run through all the probes and the machine and make sure everything's good. They'll send it back, and we'll be ready to go for the season.
Great. And do you have information on the harvester and it's being repaired, or is that a
I
rock?
know it's a highway thing, but I know.
Oh, it's a
they
highway,
have been, Huey mentions it often when we have lunch together, that it's down in Housatonic, they're working on it, and I think there was one of our DPW meetings with Mike Canales, I think Huey said there was trying to find a used engine to put on it.
Right.
This is a brand new one, and that's the last I heard, because the engine it needs.
Do you know?
So it's
do you know
still
what the-
being fixed.
Yeah.
Do you know what the difference in cost is?
No idea.
Does you know the difference? in
Huey
cost?
knows that stuff inside now, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, is it all right for us to ask him what the difference in cost is too? I'm sure it is, I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a whole insurance thing. They didn't think the insurance company.
Yeah, I understand that, but if it's a certain amount, maybe,
I don't think
we
there's a
would raise
huge, I don't
money or-
think there's a huge
you know,
difference.
so that the option is there, we don't lose the season.
Yeah.
It might be worth it to a lot of people. Like we did when we raised $16,000 for that blue one, just to get it on the water originally, and it was worth it because it's such it's such a great size for around the island and down the
Yes.
outlet.
Yeah.
Where the big one, if the water's low,
You can't-
has a much harder time to get down there.
Yeah.
But the upside of all this is it's not the repair of an engine, which can take lots of time. This is just locating an engine,
Yeah.
and then you're just putting the engine.
But if we can
It's
find a
not
new
time
one
consuming.
for X amount more, and that's an option, there might be a group of people on the, to send out to,
It shouldn't be an issue funding.
Yeah, I hope not, but
No, no.
I didn't want it to hold it up.
Yeah, no, it won't be held up.
And Huey would have, if you wanted to contact Huey on that,
The other thing, if talking about, when I spoke, did you get in touch with Hugh about the what's it called, the drawdown, not the drawdown,
Yeah.
but the mechanism?
Conservation.
I spoke to conservation.
Yeah, we should just test it to make sure if it's not used enough, it could get frozen or whatever.
That highway can do that.
Yeah, I just want that, since we're not lowering the lake, it should be made sure that it is still working
Just make sure.
properly.
Just
That's
make
all.
sure you can lower it, that's.
Yeah, right. Once you raise it.
Yeah, it needs to
Yeah.
be greased really well.
Absolutely, just as a reminder for maintenance.
Okay. Anything else, Michael?
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
Gary, do you have anything, zebra mussels, buoys?
We're coming out of hibernation. I think we're gonna lose one inspector this year, but that's no big deal. We'll pick somebody else up.
All right,
Other than that, we plan to start on Memorial Day weekend.
right. And then we had, we know,
We have the pressure washer, at the water building, so, just keep me abreast on that, so I don't forget, and we'll
Middle of-
service it.
Middle of May.
Yeah,
It's fine.
Middle of May, and
I'll let you know.
will be here before you know it.
and this may be a Michael or Roxanne, or it could be the Parks and Rec. Do we have any updates on the driveway for Town Beach for this summer? Before,
I know Huey, I was talking to him.
Or is that a
this
Hugh
morning.
thing?
Yeah, the highway department's doing that. And they're anxiously awaiting frost to come out and things to dry up before they get up there, but that's on Huey's,
Okay.
on his priority list.
And is his hope to have it done before the summer or?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great, because I'm sure that'll make things easier. Summer.
I have questions.
Go, sure.
Is there any word, has Michael Canales gotten any word about, from public access about any of the work we're gonna hopefully do at the boat ramp?
I haven't heard anything. Anyone else?
I don't think he's heard.
No, okay.
Yeah.
At the meeting when they came?
All the
Yeah.
paving and stuff.
No, I think, was it trees also?
Yeah,
Boat
there's
ramp trees is
They're
a bunch of,
suffering.
yeah, projects.
evidently, public access is gonna make the arrangements, not us,
Right,
so,
yeah. And they have a huge backlog.
yep, we maybe a couple of years yet.
Right. Charlie, do you have something from Board of Health?
Well, I have a little follow-up on I was asked to investigate
Oh, yeah.
Mike Buffoni's suggestion about thermal imaging as a way to identify underwater sources. And actually, Mike's idea is a good one. I spoke to Dr. Stephen Mabey, who's the director of Massachusetts Geological Survey and also in the Geosciences Department at the U of Mass. I had met with him about 2 years ago with David Bout, also from the Geosciences Department, to discuss the hydrogeological vulnerabilities of the Bowles watershed. And so I went back to Dr. Mabey, and in fact, Mike is right. The thermal imaging could be useful because the groundwater remains relatively constant, about 9 to 11 degrees centigrade throughout the year. In the wintertime, it tends to be warmer than the surficial waters, and in the summertime, it tends to be cooler by quite a bit. If you do it in the spring or the fall, it ends up being about the same, so that's not a useful time to do it. That kind of let's say a drone or some other kind of a thermal imaging analysis can be done pretty quickly, and then you can focus in on it with dropping down thermistors, and doing a grid of thermistors in the areas that would be of interest. And I do think that Dr. Mabey might be interested in coming to the commission at some point, if we would invite him, and maybe Dr. Bout, to discuss some of these watershed vulnerabilities. There's another guy in Williamstown, Dr. Dethier, who did identify an underground source that was significant up in Williamstown, and I'm trying to locate him. He's retired from the Williams College, so he's a little harder to track down. But so I do think Mike's idea is a good one. I do think this might be a useful thing to put into our lake management plan.
Well,
Go ahead, Michael.
what's the end result of knowing this? Like in a nutshell, not in a whole major.
Well, just to be very specific, let's say, for example, that we're looking at nutrient loading and we're seeing herbicide growth and we're seeing cyanobacterial blooms, which is the immediate interest that the Board of Health has in preventing this kind of stuff, that we know comes from eutrophication, and in particular from accelerated eutrophication. Now, if we continue to have proliferation of either invasive species or weeds or of cyanobacteria blooms, either of which could be indications of eutrophication, and at the same time, we know that the neighbors around the lake are being careful. We know that we've got the septic fields under control. We've got all this other kind of stuff. An underground source, let's say coming from a farm or something at a distance, can be a significant source of nutrients that we weren't aware of. Sometimes this can actually be related to septic fields that we don't aware of. And it can be revealed, let's say, with blasting, or things can be changed, let's say, with blasting things when we don't understand the patterns of flow. We might be doing things that would jeopardize our situation. So I'm just, this is where it would come from. I think Dr. Mabey could explain that to everybody better than I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions for Charlie? Seeing none. John, do you have something?
Yeah, the sewer water met on March 1st. We had a very good meeting. At that meeting, Mike Canales and the three select people were present because we were discussing some of the concerns that the Lake Drive Association had regarding funds. And we discussed the appropriation of the ARPA funds, which appears to be something that doesn't hardly meet some of the requirements if we were to extend the sewer in Lake Drive, which appears to be the ongoing conversation. We've had communication with Lake Drive Associates who feel that we're not moving quickly enough and we're stonewalling them. And we've had to address that issue by saying that we're not stonewalling, that we have a priority list. And right now, as Tony Campetti made us aware, we have a very big problem with the I&I study, which shows that we require to do quite a bit of clay pipe replacement, and we do have a certain capacity to our filtration system that may be exceeded unless we fix these infiltration of surface water. So that's an ongoing discussion, and we are prioritizing in the 3-year study. I think some of the letters that have been going back and forth, I think Mike had just assessed it and it gave us an understanding of what's going on regarding the DeSisto school, which appears to be in the discussion too, because some of the discussion was, well, how come they're getting the water and they're getting the sewer and water and we're not, Lake Drive. And I think Mike said, well, that's been there for a long time. Mike DeSisto School has had that system for a long time. So I guess to cap this, I think it's an ongoing discussion. I think that we as an organization that are concerned about the management of the lake are concerned about the possible impact of septics that aren't working as well as they should. And we would like to see these Lake Drive homes get connected to the sewer, but we have to decide when and how much it's going to cost. Obviously, it's something that's much more than the ARPA funds, which were initially thought to be the ones that we're going to tap into. So it's an ongoing discussion. No answers yet.
Great, thank you. Any questions for John? Roxanne, would you like to share?
No, the only other thing I'd like to mention though about the meeting with DEP is this whole issue of concurrent projects. And basically, they won't, and Brian Harrington actually spoke to this, they won't just give you a blanket, yes, you can do 2 at the same time. What they'll always do is they will hedge. There's the possibility that you might be able to do 2 projects concurrently. It depends on what those projects are. So it's just like any special permit, say that the select board sees, they don't make any decision until they see the specs on those projects. And they determine whether or not there's a conflict between them. So would it be possible to do obviously the harvesting and the herbicide project simultaneously at the same time? Yeah. Could we do harvesting? Because there's low impact with harvesting. We're doing limited harvesting. Same thing with dredging. We're not going to be dredging the channel, or if they're dredging the channel, we're not harvesting the channel. So there's still the possibility that we could selectively harvest. That's more likely. 2 larger projects, probably less likely, but they will not give a definitive answer until they actually see those projects that are proposed. So that's the bottom line with that. It's still kind of a gray area.
Yeah, harvesting just seems like you're out mowing the lawn, it's just routine maintenance. I mean, it's so.
It's almost to me like harvesting isn't even a project.
No,
that's what I'm amazed, that we've given it a project.
Well, there are 2 permits. They're different.
I understand
It's
the
above us.
bureaucracy of it, but I'm amazed that it's gotten to that point. We've been doing it, as I repeat, 50 times.
Over 30 years.
Over 30 whatever years, and by then we would know if it affects endangered species or what, and there seems to have been no
Right.
issues. So it's amazing to me that we've allowed, or that the DEP or the NHESP has made it
Right.
a
And
project.
the one thing that I did mention in that meeting, and because we have voted on this more than once in terms of the priority of dredging, is I indicated that, and Pat was there, but I indicated that the SBSC had set the number one priority that we felt, in our opinion, was the dredging. However,
We voted on that.
we voted on it more than once
Yes.
in this group. So I made that very clear that that is the position of the SBSC. However, because this involved a court case and a negotiated settlement, this is up to the SBA whether they move forward with the herbicide project or not. It is, we have no control over that.
Yep. But it's going to take about 3 years of testing before they get full approval though, isn't it? So, I mean, we could do
Exactly.
dredging and,
It's like a 4-year project.
yeah.
So, but that, again, is up to the SBA. Does the SBA want to change their direction? Do they want to change their priority? How do they see it? And if we can do two things simultaneously, wonderful. But like you had mentioned before, I think we all agree, nobody wants to hold off on moving forward on the dredging project itself. So to move forward with the permitting part, and the SBA through Pat has told me, you know, they clearly would also be willing to continue fundraising in terms of dredging, and that it would be very important for the SBA to be assisting in that.
And got to keep
Yeah,
in mind.
can I interject for a second? I agree, Roxanne, totally. You and I have had discussions about this. Somehow, again, in the narrative, it seems like people are saying the SBA is not in favor of dredging. That is, there couldn't be anything further from the truth. Again, my position, and I was very encouraged by what I heard at the meeting, both from Brian and from Misty Ann, is that these projects may be able to be done simultaneously. And the irony is the dredging may more affect the herbicide test than the other way around due to turbidity and other things. And we need to determine that. Misty Ann said, quote unquote, I'm not the one to determine that. You have to look at the engineering studies and figure out the impact. So I just want to reiterate that the SBA is more than willing to do whatever to help get the dredging project done. And fundraising is going to be an issue. And it becomes an issue in terms of the timing of not only getting the permit, but when we actually have enough money to put shovels in the ground. And that is something, when we look at timelines and when things are going to conflict, I think we also need to take into account.
Right. I mean, and one thing I'll just ask you, I think it sounds like, in addition to the map, if we can get from GZA any kind of detailed information on the level of turbidity and maybe the area that's impacted by that turbidity. In other words, is there an envelope where the turbidity ends?
It's all downstream.
How, you know, I don't know how bad it
It's all downstream.
is.
It shouldn't, it has no effect on the major lake. It's all,
Okay.
Except, Gary, when they're
Water.
unloading the geotubes by Bullard Woods, there's going to be disturbance in the northern end of the lake as they are taking the stuff that is piped up there. So I don't want to assume it's only on the southern end of the lake.
Yeah, I mean, but I think in terms of where the tube is traveling, you know, what's the impact? But maybe we can get some kind of a summarization from GZA about that kind of impact.
Right.
Get it to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Roxanne. And I appreciate the offer, because what I will do is go back to Dominic and say, what other data besides the map do we need to understand the impact of one project on the other? So thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay. So, can we adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
next meeting, 2 weeks
Yes, so April 1st.
first.